It was from Ohio and sent it out to them as a wedding gift along with the little blue and white coverlet at the foot of the bed. Harold, who died at age 23 of tuberculosis, it was quite prevalent at that time. The second one in is Richard.
Parting word from the former president, something he said back in January about his feelings.
Well, my answer very briefly is this. Politics is never going to be heaven. And sometimes it's heaven. But it was worth the trip. Against disease all over the world. That is a great challenge for great people.
Yes.
That brings us to the role of the United States. The United States.
In accordance with your voice, mindful of your consensus, sustained by your faith. Thank you.
from our next president that he will have my wholehearted support.
Guests find the First Lady a hostess of dignity and warmth. In their first 2 years, the President and his First Lady entertained...
President Nixon was the president. Landed a man on the moon.
There's a lot of times in my life when I've been wrongdoing, and this is one of those days.
Crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the gooder.
Did you get all that? They said, yeah.
Engine. There's no backup. It fails.
Forever, if indeed.
You on a subject of deep concern to all Americans and to many people in all parts of the world, the war in Vietnam. I believe that one of the reasons for the deep division about Vietnam is that many Americans have lost confidence in what their government has told them about our policy. The American people, we would blame the defeat, which would be the result of my actions, on him. And come off as a prisoner. Some put it to and on the future of peace, will understand peace. And some Americans are against peace. The question at issue is not whether Johnson's war becomes Nixon's war. The great question is, how can we win America's peace? My fellow Americans, I am sure you can recognize that I can...
On behalf of my fellow Californians, the candidate Richard Nixon as the next President of the United States, and I shall...
That nomination for President of the United States. We're going to win!
This is the story of a president who stood on the highest mountain tops and walked the deepest valleys. It is a story... Coming back from defeat was one of the hallmarks of Richard Nixon's life in the arena. He had first served as a freshman congressman 43 years before.
By what Secretary Jim Baker said when he was in Moscow. People sometimes ask me, why don't I just retire and enjoy life? Who needs to talk to the press, write books, articles, or give speeches? What's greater than yourself, you will die mentally, and then you will die physically. You know, I picked up this letter.
It's been a remarkable recovery for him. The qualities that brought him to the pinnacle of power had their roots in his Linda, California.
There was a lot of hard work in our house, and that didn't mean life. You miss a great dimension in life.
Tricia Ryan, she would be his partner in all the challenges to do.
And Pat had to make the race, and because I had Pat.
After a growing threat of communism abroad.
Never have been a member of the Communist Party.
Almost everybody believed Hiss, except Richard Nixon. He wouldn't give up. In the end, Hiss was convicted of perjury and went to prison. National figure, well known enough now. The Republicans had a dream candidate, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, architect of the victory over Hitler, only 5 years' experience in government. Nixon's youth and his handling of the Hiss case appealed to Eisenhower.
His case. And just as we began the campaign, a scurrilous story appeared in the left-wing New York newspaper. Fired me off the ticket. I was tempted to get off because I didn't want to hurt Eisenhower.
To the Republican, which it is theirs to make. Let them decide whether my position on the ticket will help or hurt. And I'm going to ask you to help them decide. Wire and write the Republican National Committee whether you think I should stay on or whether I should get off. And whatever their decision is, I will abide by.
His candor and courage carried the day.
I feel that
and again prevailed, becoming one of the youngest vice presidents in American history. Broadened his experience in foreign affairs as he in fact toured 4 continents as Eisenhower's emissaries of goodwill. Most nations received them warmly, but a few visits were disrupted by communist agitators. Returning home, Nixon received a hero's welcome, with a conciliatory message for the Soviet people.
And above all, areas where we can substitute cooperation for competition in achieving our joint goal of a fuller, freer, richer life for every man, woman, and child on this earth. Thank you.
1960. He was the overwhelming favorite for the Republican nomination for president. In accepting it, he addressed the challenge the Soviet leader had laid down to him in Moscow.
When Mr. Khrushchev says our grandchildren will live under communism, let us say his grandchildren will live in freedom.
In 4 historic, his rallying cries were standing up for America and extending its hand to appear.
Months. So I refused to authorize it.
For the next 2, he made an unsuccessful run for governor of California. Afterwards, AB 64. And 2 years later, he was credited with helping his party score dramatic gains in midterm elections. Hard work.
I have my ability to cope with the issues in the fires of the primaries, and not just in the smoke-filled rooms of Miami.
Entering all the primaries was a great risk. But after the defeats in 1960 and 1962, many people said I couldn't win an election. I had to prove that I could. It wasn't...
He entered. By convention time, Nixon had almost enough delegates to win the nomination. On the convention floor, it was Wisconsin that put him over the top.
Wisconsin is proud to cast its 30 votes for the nominee of this convention, Richard M. Nixon, next President of the United States.
Nixon won it on the first ballot.
The long, dark night for America is about to end. Despair and climb the mountain so that we may see the glory of the dawn. A new day for America and a new dawn for peace and freedom in the world.
His political obituary, he was elected the 37th. Nixon moved easily into the presidency. His vision in both domestic and in schools. But the international Americans sent by Kennedy and Johnson were fighting in Vietnam. The war seemed to be achieved peace with honor and brought our... A bold act of statesmanship was opening, depended on...
No Soviet threat. I would have made the trip. We must never again permit over 1 billion of the ablest people in the world to live in angry isolation.
Nixon diplomacy succeeded in small ways, too.
I express my appreciation to my... Listen to her translation. She got every...
Called hard-headed détente. A foresighted policy, détente was to have far-reaching effects in bringing East and West closer together. During 3 summits with the Soviet leader, he signed the...
I laid a wreath at the cemetery, which commemorates the brave people who died during the siege of Leningrad in World War II. At the cemetery, I saw the picture of a 12-year-old girl. She was a beautiful child.
But even as men were caught breaking into the offices of the Democratic National Committee, the president knew nothing about it. But in the months that followed, some of his aides became involved in a cover-up of the incident that led to their resignations.
I've never been a quitter. To leave office before my term is completed is abhorrent to every instinct in my body. But as president, I
I must put the interests of America first. Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow. Vice President Ford will be sworn in as president at that hour in this office.
The following morning, he said farewell to his staff.
The old must know it. They must always sustain us, because the greatness comes not when things go always good for you, but the greatness comes and you're really tested when you take some knocks, some disappointments, when sadness comes. Can you ever know how magnificent it is to be on the highest mountain?
The emotion of the moment, saying in particular, it's so sad, it's so sad.
He was in his deepest valley, but he was back. Thousands of
Crisis, and at the present time, in those relations.
Afterwards, he briefed President Bush at the White House. And now to enjoy favorite pastimes.
Happy birthday to you.
He has also been able to relax in the role of grandfather.
To you will be not just that we saved the world from communism, but that we helped make the world safe for freedom. Years ago, the poet Sophocles wrote, "One must wait until the evening to see how splendid the day has been." I have won some great victories, and I have suffered some devastating defeats. But now, in the evening of my life, I can look back and say, the day has indeed been splendid.
I decided to take a last ride this time. I stood there for about 5 minutes, and then suddenly a thought just... I walked forward. Sorry. We walked forward. Movies, read a lot of